Well, I'm Robin. I play in a band called The Ocean. And yeah, we're going on tour with Cave in May, June in Australia. Looking forward to be back. We've just been over there last September with Obliviscaris, and it's our fifth or sixth time. So yeah, we're stoked to come back with a full headline set this time and to present you guys our new record, Holocene, which we haven't been touring with so far. I guess we just played one track on the last tour. So it's going to be a lot of songs that we haven't really played live on your precious continent before, and we're stoked to do that.
Fantastic, Robin. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Yeah, most welcome. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure. So, as you say, the Ocean returned to Australia for your first headline tour of the country in over 10 years, with a run of dates starting in Brisbane on June the 5th. It goes through Newcastle, Canberra, Sydney, Perth, and Melbourne, and finishing in Adelaide on June the 15th. Like, it's still probably a month or so away, but like, do you allow yourself to get excited this far out from a run of shows, or do you sort of wait till they come and then start thinking about it?
Well, I'm in the middle of tour preparations right now. Inevitably, you start dealing with a tour more than a couple of weeks in advance. It's a lot of logistics involved. We're also doing Southeast Asian dates before we get to Australia. And just the whole luggage and merch shipping and transport situation is extremely complicated. So unfortunately, right now, it's quite mundane logistics stuff. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to finally being over there and touring and playing shows. We love Australia. It's always been great. This time I have a feeling we're actually gonna be able to enjoy it because the last couple of times it was just like always super early morning flights at like, like getting to the airport at like 5 or 6 a.m. and then you're never in bed before 3. And so we just didn't sleep. So I was like a zombie on that last tour. I don't remember any of it. So I'm looking forward to we have a better schedule now. I'm looking forward to actually wake up in the morning and have a flat white and enjoy the day.
It'd take the fun out of it to an extent too, wouldn't it? If you're always up and traveling that time of day, like you'd just be miserable and cranky and putting on a nice face.
Yeah, exactly. And I understand it's usually the cheaper flights, but
Yeah.
it makes such a difference. Like sleep is not overrated. It's the one thing you need most on tour because it's long days anyways, and it's exhausting traveling. And yeah, if you don't sleep, you're just fucked. And then you play worse, you are grumpy and miserable, and you hate your life, and that's not what you should be doing when you're touring Australia. So we put great attention this time on telling the promoter to please not book these early morning flights, and they've done that. So we're very happy and very thankful for that. It's gonna be great.
Very cool. And as you mentioned, you're only out here last year with Nihil, Obliviscaris and Rivers of Nihil. So you obviously got enough interest from those shows to make you come back so quickly again.
Well, it wasn't actually planned to go that way. Like we had this headline tour that we're doing now originally scheduled for like fall of last year. And then that offer to go out with Rivers and Neo came up and we were like, oh, that's actually a great opportunity right now because we haven't been in Australia for the past 5 years just because of the pandemic, basically. So we thought it's good to remind people that we're still there, going out on a tour that is not our own, and we still got to play like an hour-long set. So it just made sense from many angles. We knew the Neo guys for a long time, they're friends. So we decided to do that and to postpone our headline tour. So that's why we're coming back so soon. It wasn't really planned to happen that way, but that tour just came up. That tour offer with Neo came up out of the blue, and we decided to jump on it. So here we are returning for the second time within half a year. But yeah, before that, we haven't been there for 5 years. So I think hopefully people are not too oversaturated with ocean content yet.
So what are people going to get differently out of this run of headline shows then that from when you were just playing on another band's tour last year?
A longer set. We're going to play up to 90 minutes, I think. Of course, also a different set list. Like I said, we're going to focus on Holocene, our latest record, which was only released in May. We only played one song of that record on the last tour. Now we're doing like 5, I believe, 5 or 6. So the focus is on the new record, and we're also looking to play some tracks that we haven't played on the last tour. So it's going to be different set list, better production, of course, and a longer set.
You mentioned the production, like the press release makes notice of that, and they refer to it as your biggest Australian production yet. So, what does that actually entail? What's bigger? What do you bring? What more are you bringing?
Just more lights.
Lights are always good.
And a fully time-coded show. Yeah, like we've always put great attention to our lighting. I think it's just so important to when you play like moody heavy atmospheric music, the visual aspect is very important, I think, you know, like, so we've been putting great attention to that already for the past couple of years, but it's also always quite expensive. And obviously in Australia, we can't bring the stuff that we own, so we have to rent everything or fly it with us. So it's challenging, but I think we have something pretty cool. And I think that makes a big difference for the shows, because in the end, when you go to a concert, you want to have like a full body and mind experience, right? Like for me, it's not just like good audio quality. It's like the whole immersive experience. That's what we're trying to do, to offer an immersive experience that is kind of like audio visual and everything's connected, all the songs flow. And yeah, it's just so much easier to do that when you have a bit of production at your fingertips, rather than when you have to be the support band, you know, setting up in front of someone else's drum kit and not get to use what you usually want to bring out. That's just how it is. So that's why every band will always enjoy a headline tour more than a support tour. You know, it's just how it is. And so yeah, we're stoked to finally get to do a tour that is ours, under our terms and with our set and production, you know, as we love it. So yeah.
Very cool. And you mentioned bringing out US hardcore pioneers Cave In for their first Australian tour. You also bring in Danish label mates LLNN. So why choose those two bands to bring with you?
Okay, so Cave In have been a huge influence for me personally. I grew up in the 90s as a hardcore kid and listened to all the Hydra bands around that time. Botch, Cave In, Cable, Coalesce, like all of these bands kind of forged my own musical path in many ways. And so getting to tour with those legends is just unreal. I fucking love that band. And they came back strong with a great new album. And I think it's a very interesting musical match. You know, they're also heavy in their own way and psychedelic, and they have this kind of space rock twist to them that somehow really, I think, resonates with what we do, although it's also very audio idiosyncratic and very different. And I think it's just a very interesting blend, you know, like two bands coming together to play. And LLNN, our label mates, they're just the heaviest band on earth as of now.
Wow.
I really can't think of any band that is heavier than them. And they just absolutely crush it. And we've been on tour with them already in Europe. Yeah, they're a really intense band to watch live, and I really wanted to bring them out to Australia to offer something distinctively different from Cave In and the Ocean. And it's always challenging to take the stage after them because they just annihilate the room and like nothing is left standing up after they leave the stage. But it's a challenge we like to face, so we're looking forward to it.
Make sure you come out with your A game on, got it?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's going to be the guys from Cave In. It'll be their first trip out here. So are you going to give them a few pointers of what to expect? Haven't been out here before, or are you just going to let them find out for themselves?
Oh, we haven't spoken much about the tour in advance. I know Nate, who now plays in Cave In from years back. He actually guested on our Aeolian record with vocals. Yeah, we've been speaking a bit about the tour, but he's been to Australia with other bands many times, and I haven't spoken to any of the other guys in advance. And yeah, so we'll see how it goes. But Australia is always like short and intense. You know, you can only do so many shows in the country, obviously. But the shows are always very good. We've always had great turnouts and a very responsive crowd. You have a huge and very vibrant prog scene somehow that likes the ocean. And that surprises me sometimes, because in Europe, it's not really like that. I mean, our crowd here is different. You know, it's more like the dark and post-metal crowd that comes to our shows. And in Australia, it's a lot of prog kids, and that's great. They like what we do. They come out in numbers, so we're always happy to play there. And I'm sure for Cave In it's going to be the same. They've never been to Australia with that band, but I think every member of that band has been to Australia with other bands, so I think they know what they're like, letting themselves in for.
Yeah, and along those lines, mate, like, do you expect anything from your crowds in a sense? So, like, is there anything that they can do to make you walk off stage and go, fuck me, that was a special show tonight?
There's just a certain vibe to certain cities, you know, and I think Australian crowds are generally very responsive and warm and welcoming and loud, and that's good. But we also play a couple of smaller markets on this tour that we haven't done in a long time, like Canberra, Newcastle. We've never played there before. so those will be more, I guess, more punk rock DIY shows. And this is where we come from. We're also looking forward to playing those smaller shows, you know, in places where maybe not so many international bands get to play. Sometimes those can be the more intense shows actually than the big cities, just because people are not so spoiled or jaded. And not just in Australia, anywhere, you know, like we've had some of the greatest shows we've ever played were in Siberia or in Ecuador or in countries and places where not a whole lot of European bands get to go. And people are just so thankful and hungry there. It's just always awesome. So I'm looking forward to the small cities as well. But of course, Melbourne is a highlight.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we could tell on the last tour already that there was a great deal of anticipation. And again, when you're supporting, it's a different vibe. You know, people have only had like the first beer of the night or maybe the second or the third. But like once you go up there headlining, people are in the right mood and they want it. And then it's just so much easier to just, you know, to
Flick the switch,
fire up a spark and get the room going. And yeah, and that always that has always worked well over there. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah. Now you mentioned your latest album, Holocene, a bit earlier on, mate. Like that album was slightly different sonically for the Ocean. So how was it received by your fans? Did they embrace it like you thought they would?
Yeah, pretty much. I think we're now in the lucky position where people kind of eat everything we feed them. And that's great. It hasn't always been like that. I remember when we released Heliocentric, the first record with Loic on vocals over 14 years ago. Everyone was complaining back then that this is no longer metal. And, you know, and well, I always replied then that we were never a metal band in the first place. And yeah, it's been challenging though for many years. And now it seems like we can do whatever the fuck we want and people will roll with it and love it. So the response has been great to this record. It is more electronic. It is more calm in a way. It takes more time to get going, but it's also very much an Ocean record. And I think that's what most people seem to have realized, that although the sound seems a bit different at first, and the electronic component is more in the foreground than previously, it still has that oceanic essence that has always been there throughout our last records. And that is why I think this album resonated very well with our existing fan base, and as well brought in a lot of new people to the table that maybe weren't aware of the band before, or, you know, didn't like it before. So it's been very good. And live, it's been challenging to play that record live. Like the first couple of shows, I remember we toured with This Will Destroy You over here in Europe, and it was the first time we played pretty much the first half of Holocene live. And at first we were like, fuck, this is very different, you know, because it's just so slow, such a slow burner, that you really have to let yourself in for it. But then once you do, it's awesome. And we really started enjoying it. And we just embraced the fact that we're no longer going out there as the hardcore band, just like, you know, getting the energy level from 0 to 100. No, it's like the first 15, 20 minutes of the set are a slow rise. And then by the end of it, the room is on fire, you know? It's just like it's a different game somehow. And we really enjoy it now. And it seems to work really well with the crowd as well. It's not necessarily what I want to do with the next 2-3 records. Again, so this is an experimental record for us, and it's not necessarily an indication of where we're headed with the following record. But for now, it's an experiment we enjoy a lot, and what we learned a lot from as well.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask about that in relation to the live set, because there's more the electronics and the more subtle melodic passages in there. So do you find it hard fitting them into, because the rest of your music's pretty aggressive, so you can't really go down and up and down and up. So did you say that you get around that by playing all those songs at the start of the set?
Yeah, that was kind of the only way to make that work. Like we tried like mixing them up with older material at first, and it just didn't really make sense somehow. Like to me, those first 4 or 5 songs of Holocene, the first 4 tracks of Holocene, they're separate songs, but at the same time, they're one piece of music, you know, like every track builds on what's been like the foundation that the previous track has laid. And if you just cut out a part there, the dynamics don't work anymore. So you need to kind of play them in a sequence. And then after that, there's a cut. Like after track 4, track 5, it's possible to, you know, switch into something else. But you need those first 20 minutes in one block. You need to, you know, be served that as a whole, basically. And so, yeah, we quickly realized that. It's always interesting because I was kind of aware of that already when writing the record, that it would be like that, you know. But sometimes it's not like that. Sometimes you have this great idea and then you try it live and you're like, oh, this totally failed. And, you know,
what do I do?
Yeah, exactly. Live and learn, fall on your face and get back up. But yeah, here we adapted pretty quickly. And I kind of knew already that you had to, like, that we would have to play those tracks together. And that's what we ended up doing. And I think that's what we'll always be doing with those tracks when we play them live.
Very good. All right, Robin. Well, thanks very much for your time tonight, mate. The Ocean start their tour in Australia on June the 5th in Brisbane. There's still plenty of tickets left, so get amongst them now before they do sell out, because these things invariably sell out at the last minute. So I'll probably come along to the Brisbane show, mate, so I'll give you away from the crowd.
All righty. See you there, man. Take care.